For instance, we get those huge 28 ask prints here. Okay, what's the trade? What's the actual trade itself? So it's a number one trade. Okay, it's way above print personality. Okay, the stock is trading at 20 cents right now. So really, how much should it have to move based off that many prints? So we can start with 50 cents. That was a lot, though. That was a lot. So starting with 50 cents, you're not going to get hurt at all, but really it should move somewhere in the dollar vicinity, no? Because look at this volume. I want you to understand averages for a second. Okay, does LCID on average typically trade 2.3 million shares during the pre-market? No, right? Okay, so we can expect our average from today, on average $1.26, because 50 cents would be the 100% the correct answer based off of what we have going on right now. You're figuring two levels. Okay, that's a perfect price target to kind of set for the beginning. But based off of the variables that we see coming into this, can't we expect it to beat $1.26 in its movement? We can. So that's just something that we need to think about. But once it hits 27, does that mean it's going to have more room down? Does that mean today that we're going to be looking for short trades in LCID all day? And I think sometimes we get caught up thinking like that, because essentially all it has to do is hit a spot, okay, that makes sense for the prints and the increments. And from there, it could come from 27, and guess what? All of a sudden, we just come flying back up. But the 28 prints tell us by far it's what number trade. So we have to, number one, right? So we have to start to kind of manage once we see prints in the pre-market, what are expectations of that stock? It's still just one trade. It's not that the pre-market is setting up for the entire day. It's setting up for a trade. Because what are we? By definition, we're traders. We're looking for trades in these stocks. So I feel like a lot of people get caught up in what they saw during the pre-market once the market actually opens. And we see constantly, okay, where we get great prints that come in the pre-market, and all of a sudden it changes its personality once the market opens, because from there we have to take those pre-market prints and kind of fit it into the new story of what we see coming into it at the new point. Is this making sense to everybody? Just want to make sure I'm explaining this right. Because once we have our pre-market trade, once it does what it told us it's going to do in the pre-market, we essentially have to look for a new trade. Like, for instance, if this stock came up and if it comes down to 27.50 and we get a trigger back towards that 28 spot, are those prints still valid for us to trade off of once the market opens? So not really, because think about it. As we said, now, yes, it should pull back a little bit more than 27.50. And we're going to actually work on where we're going to put our orders and what we, basically is exactly what I want you guys to do once we get to our level 3. I'm going to do it exactly the way that I want to see it happen. Okay, but I want you to understand something. If this stock now, it hits where it needs to pull back based off those prints, then it comes back up to the 28 level. Can we still use those 28 prints for a move back to the downside if it's satisfied what it needed to do during the pre-market? No, we can't. It changes everything. Well, yes, to go long, but that's if it's during the pre-market and you're not trading pre-market, then that changes everything. So we have to understand that the prints that we see are during the pre-market aren't magical prints, is really what I'm getting at. It's not like you get good pre-market prints and then that's just, okay, this is what's going to happen for the day. Yeah, you understand what I mean? So what we want to do, we have 5 minutes coming into it. What we're going to be looking for is new prints that are coming in right as the market starts, because we can use that as soon as the market opens. But we're also going to work on using what we see when something pops up in the morning. The morning time is the best, because the second a stock pops up and gives you prints, basically all you have to do is set up your game plan right there. And from there, we take a trade. And the better the longer that you do this, the better you're going to get at basically seeing those prints, instantly understanding what the setup should look like, and then taking everything that we worked on yesterday. Does it have the possibility of a trade? Okay, because there's also another thing that really gets a lot of people in the morning is a stock that shows tons of potential during the pre-market, but once the market opens, it starts to trade kind of choppy. It doesn't really have the opportunity. It still has great prints in it, but the stock itself isn't giving us the maximum chance to really get into the trade and have it go as far away as quickly as possible for us. And that's what I want to show you guys today. Now, what do we think in LCID based off those prints? Just because we have 5 minutes left and there's no point in just sitting here and waiting for 4 minutes now to pass. What do we think should happen? Should we get a nice bar up as soon as the market opens, or do we need to continue down a bunch? So there's really two ways that the chart should look based off of that many prints coming into 28. Number one, beautiful bar up. From that bar up, what number trade am I going to look for? Number one. Okay, we have to think. Okay, I don't care if this stock runs up to 30 the second the market opens. What did they tell us at 28 based off these 28 ass prints? Look at how many there are. What did they tell us? They need to build. So a bar down, there's two situations. We can have two orders ready to actually be in this stock. Okay, one of them would be we wouldn't have two orders set. We could have an order set now for when a bar down comes in to actually come down and continue on this path for the building. Or what do they do all the time at the open? They do the reverse of what they're looking to do first, which would then be a bar up, which we would then be ready to take back towards the downside. Because based off of these prints, remember, when I start my day, am I looking to start it with an exception? Never. So what do these prints tell me? It's guaranteed they tell me something right now. It literally should not mean anything else. And if it doesn't, they're telling me they need to build. So any type of trade that I'm going to look for to take this trade once the market opens is going to be for building. It's going to be towards building, because in no way is this many prints satisfy, okay, a building phase coming down at 27.57. And there's also another thing we want to look at. Is this building volume right here? Not really. So for this amount of prints, to only use this amount of volume, I can't see them being able to build. Because if this is the tip of the iceberg, imagine what they're really looking to do. So then we want to go to our other prints. We want to start looking around, okay? 27.61, okay. When we look at that, where's our money flow so far? Are we getting more selling or more buying? Or is it very close to each other? I'll go slow so you can look at it if you're using my screen. What is the money flow? It's a bit mixed, right? There might be a little bit more towards the buying side, but it's not, just blatantly in your face that they brought this down to buy. So I still go with my same expectations of once the market opens that I'm going to be looking for some type of building trade. Okay, so up here right now, what I'd be doing is I'd be putting an order. Okay, huge 28 ass prints again. So as this is following up right now, I'd have an order about 27.91. Great buying still coming into it. I'm going to be moving my order up. Right now, I'd have an order about 27.97. A little bit higher than that. So 28.18 as we see this thing just popping up. Because yes, there's phenomenal buying in it, but it did not show those 28 aspirants, and then the second time at 28, and then 28.50 right now. So everything that's happening in the stock, what are they telling me they're going to be doing soon? And we'll stick with this one, and then we'll just use a brand new stock afterwards. What are they telling me right now? Build, build, build. So right now, all I'm looking for is a trigger to the downside. Do I want to start to see some selling coming in before that? Absolutely. Why? Because I want to see some people come out there and start taking some short positions in it. 2850, build, 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 build. Because right now we are getting far away from where we need to be with building, 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 building prints. So let's go back. Any short positions in this stock yet? Has anyone seen any short positions yet? Basically nothing. How do I recognize that? You should see some type of selling coming into it. Look at since 2850. So right here, if off these 2850 ask prints, we're going to get a building trade. Okay, that's going to be coming back down. We have to expect that someone's going to be riding this. Look at the prints afterwards. Does anyone see any real selling that's came into it? No, not yet. So even though if a bar down, if we don't see, we should see selling before we get that bar down. Right now, it's all buying. If stock is just all buying, it's going to continue to go up. You understand what I mean? So we need to see some type of selling coming into this. So finally, 2558. Based off the amount of buying, is this enough? Not really. But we're starting to at least see that selling coming in. So when we have our order ready, if we don't have that selling coming in, remember, if this is going to pull back as much as that it needs to pull back, okay, are people going to ride it to the downside? Are day traders going to get into that to ride it to the downside? Yep, 100%. So we need to see that before we would just take a bar coming towards the downside. Right now, we're 3 minutes in. Remember, we don't have to rush. This one trade in itself can make a day. So there's no rush here. We need to wait to see. Now, where would we have our order right now? Somewhere right around 28.56, right in that area. As the stock is continuing up, but we're anticipating that move that's going to come back towards the downside. And as we can see, we're starting to actually see selling coming into it. 28.80, okay, coming back 28.86. Okay, notice how all of a sudden now all that buying is turning into a bit of selling. So our next trigger that we see, could we go short on this? We could. Can we go short on it before a trigger? No, absolutely not. So we have to be patient. There's no reason to rush things. I know we weren't supposed to, use the pre-market prints, but this is just too good of a trade to look for. What do we know is at 28.50 and 28? Market makers. So what do we want to see around those levels as we're looking? Because otherwise, the stock's not going to be able to break through. So what do we want to see as it's coming to those specific levels? We want to see selling that's going to be able to break it down, right? Okay, now that hinders things, right? But based off of the amount, so we know this needs to pull up now, but based off the amount of prints in comparison to the size of the buying prints, what were these people looking to do at 28.50? How do we interpret these prints? Quicker pull up, right? Still needs to pull up off these, but based off of all the amount of the larger prints that we had, I don't know, there's a lot that's coming in. I don't know if it's going to allow me to go back, but look at the size of the ask prints in comparison to what we just saw coming in there. So now we know it's got to pull up. So now what should we be ready to look for? Our trigger. And this isn't like the stock was just coming up a little bit and then came down. That's a 50-cent move down to those prints at 28.50. So it's not like we were talking about yesterday if the stock just, a few cents above and it just comes down for a second and hits. That's the computer's getting out. This went all the way up and then came back down towards that 28.50 level. Okay, there's a big difference in the psychology behind one of those. One of those was actually getting in versus somebody just hitting that certain level and end up getting out of it. Certainly has the volume pattern. Now, that's not a good look. How would I interpret this 28.62 on the ask side? Extended move up. Now, is it enough based off of the prints that we've seen? No, but it's something to think about. Remember the size of the prints in this stock. So I don't like that because that's not helping because it shows. But remember, is this enough in this type of stock based off the print personality and based off everything that it's shown us to make this stock really affect this stock based off the size of the prints that we saw? And see, you wait all morning and good things happen. Well, not all morning. It's literally 9:37, but good things happen. Who do we know is at 28? Who's the dominant market maker? For a fact. 28, right? So we know that's the dominant market maker. Can we expect games to be played here? Absolutely. So what do we want to see? Especially since we have 28 bid prints that came in. What do we want to see here? It's not just selling though. Because right now you'd be managing your trade. Yeah, if you look over here, Steve, on my 5 minutes, 27.69, there's a print line there. Sometimes it just shows up over here instead of that, work with what I got. Okay, but we're not seeing the great off-level selling. So what's that tell us? We have to be ready for what? Doesn't mean we have to get out yet, but we have to be ready for what? It can easily give us that pull-up.